Hello and welcome back to the Q&A. So as always, if you have a question for me to answer, then you can leave it down in the comments. And as always, I do prefer things that are perhaps a little bit more discussion worthy, larger, more broad topics, and generally cool things like that. Anyway, so with all that said, let's get into today's questions. Now, the very first one is from Demo0503, and this is a really interesting one. So he said, do you think that we will see the old Pit Lord General Mannoroth, since this expansion is before the Burning Crusade era? Alright, cool. Just before I get into the question, I'll explain who Mannoroth is, just really quickly, for those of you who are not sort of polished up on the lore. So as you know, the reason why the orcs ended up invading is because they got all pumped up on Demon Blood. The Demon Blood was for Mannoroth, who was one of the Burning Legion, commander guys, so yeah, that's basically what happened. Mannoroth was eventually killed during the events of Warcraft 3. But, of course, with us going back in time, a lot of people have thought, well, hey, we could get a new Mannoroth or something like that. So one of the major, I suppose, questions that a lot of lore buffs have been asking is, are we going to get an alternate dimension and Burning Legion, or are we going to get the same Burning Legion that we experience now? Now, the reason why it makes sense for it to be the same Burning Legion is that they travel around the Twisting Nether, which is kind of different from space, so maybe they could jump around dimensions with that, or alternate timelines and things like that. So that's one possibility, but of course one that also has a lot of plot and lore problems. Then the other possibility is that there are two Burning Legions, which really also has a lot of lore problems. Now, the actual truth of it is that there are two Burning Legions. We've actually found some stuff in the beta which refers to Archimonde still being alive, so yeah, it's an alternate universe Burning Legion. Now, this has got a bit of a problem, because, and this is actually something that Noble brought up when I was talking to him a while ago, it's something I didn't think of, but if we say kill Jaden or something in this expansion, well, it basically kind of breaks the lore of our own timeline, because it already tells us that we are more powerful than Kill Jaden. So there are some lore problems there, but anyway, as to Mannoroth, he's certainly alive in this era, so I think that we absolutely will see him in Warlords of Draenor. And the reason why I think that is because, basically, he's, I think, going to be the most senior Burning Legion person that we kill. In fact, I think he might be the second patch, the kind of mid-raid tier. And the reason why I think that is because, as I said, if they bring in Kill Jaden or Archimonde or something like that, well, first of all, we know we could probably kill Archimonde, maybe, and we've already pushed Kill Jaden back once, but if we fully kill either of them, or even fully kill Sagaris, it means that in our own timeline, well, there's not much of a threat there, because we already know we can defeat them. So that's why they'd probably just throw Mannoroth at us, because he's a minor enough lore character that's kind of still major enough to serve as the end boss of something. However, Grom Hellscream did single-handedly kill him in Warcraft 3, so again, it's a little bit strange, but I think we certainly could find and kill Mannoroth, and that could happen. Maybe he's going to be involved in some sort of plotline or story. So in short, the answer to your question is yes. Alright, so we've got another burning-related question from Alistair9088, who said, do you think that Gul'dan and the Shadow Council will play a big part in the content patches for Warlords? And the answer to that is absolutely. So if you're not aware, the Shadow Council are very much at play on Draenor. Honestly, I see about as much of them as I do the Iron Horde when I'm running around doing the max level stuff. For an example, Shatrat City has been completely invaded by the Shadow Council. So a number of the key Shadow Council lieutenant people do actually get killed, but what I can say is that, Gul'dan and Cho'Gall do make it through the leveling experience. That's not really a spoiler. I think everyone would have assumed that. And, well, they're currently running around doing hijinks. Now, in the very first raid tier of Warlords, we are going to first take out Highmaul to secure, just to deny the Iron Horde of their ogre reinforcements. And then we're going to go to Blackrock Foundry and deal a lot of damage to them there. Now, that will basically leave Tanaan Jungle as being the only remaining large stronghold for the Iron Horde. So, the real question is, in the second content patch, well, the second raid tier even, do we go straight into Tanaan Jungle after we've taken out Blackrock Foundry and finish the Iron Horde, then leaving us, with a final patch that involves the Burning Legion, or do we do a Burning Legion patch and then kill off the Iron Horde? Well, I think what could happen is, and this could be actually pretty cool, is that we could have the second patch be something to do with the Burning Legion, but also make it have a good story. And as a part of that story, the Iron Horde get pumped up on Demon Blood, meaning that we have to, we wait to kill them because we need to be stronger or something like that. I suppose they could do that, Or what they could do is just make us deal with the Iron Horde in the second patch, and then for the final patch, some big Burning Legion story happens, and we have some sort of last-ditch effort to prevent them from taking Draenor and ensure that they can't spill across into our timeline of Azeroth. So I think that might happen. But yes, the answer to your question is that I'm sure these guys will play a very large part in the content patches for Warlords of Draenor. Really, the only two opponents that we have to face in this expansion are the Shadow Council and the Iron Horde, so, I mean, of course, we're definitely going to deal with both of them. The Ogre Empire on the main continent to the south probably won't see the light of day in this expansion, and I'd imagine that the island of Farallon could perhaps be where, maybe that's where Gul'dan is making his big fortress for the Shadow Council. That might make sense to me. Yes, though, we're definitely going to get some content. I just hope that it's really good, and I hope that we get a really cool story. It is pretty weird how things are turning out in Warlords, though, because a lot of this lore doesn't particularly matter. I mean, it's a cool story, but it's alternate timeline. Who really cares? You know, I mean, sure, what we probably want to do is ensure that they, just kill them so they can't come back to Azeroth, but in the Tanaan Jungle opening experience, we actually destroy the Dark Portal. Well, I don't know if we fully destroy it, but at least what we do is we block off the enemy reinforcements, so we kind of completed our mission in Tanaan by shutting down the Dark Portal. Maybe in the final patch or something like that, the Iron Horde that are sitting in Tanaan Jungle may have, been able to get the Dark Portal working again, perhaps? And I suppose maybe Kairos Dormu and Rathian could have some sort of role to play in that final patch. Not 100% sure, but it's certainly worth, or I don't know, interesting to kind of ponder over. Anyway, let's move on to another question. This one is from Jason Hall, and he said, how do you think challenge modes will work with more dungeons being added with patches? A good question. And I'm just going to take it, yes, in both the context of challenge modes, but just in general for dungeons. So, first of all, for the challenge mode issue, well, really, there is no issue. Challenge modes are all normalized down to a certain gear level, so any new dungeons should be fine. Let's just say the, scale gear level is 650. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's a new dungeon or an old one. It will be at, item level 650 for all players, and it will be balanced for that. So, there's really no problems with the challenge modes. However, things do get a little bit different when we consider just adding more dungeons and how that kind of plays into things. In Cataclysm, there was a bit of an issue when they added in the troll dungeons, because it basically filtered everyone from going into maybe 8 or 9 dungeons to going into 2 dungeons. That was very dull, as it turned out, because people were just grinding the troll dungeons all the time. So they want to avoid that, and in fact that's one of the reasons that they cited for not adding multiple dungeons into Mists of Pandaria, though they have expressed that they might put more dungeons in with content patches in Warlords. I'd imagine that what they will do is add in the new dungeons at a new difficulty level, and then bring up, or maybe add that difficulty level to the old dungeons. So basically they would add a mythic dungeon, and then they'd bring the other dungeons up to mythic difficulty. Maybe they could do that halfway through the expansion so that there is always relevant 5-player dungeon content to experience. Now the reason I said that is because I believe a while ago one of the developers loosely mentioned handling a mythic system in a way like that, and I do think that it makes the most sense. I think the one thing you would have to do though is just ensure that if people want to do the new dungeons, they can, and maybe just have it so they're not penalized. Because obviously if there are 10 dungeons on this new difficulty level and 2 of them are new, well, people will probably want to go for the new ones. So there needs to be some sort of way to facilitate people being able to do that without being penalized in terms of their rewards. Still though, it's a pretty interesting topic, and I certainly do hope that they add more dungeons. As I've said many times, there are only 8 dungeons at max level in Warlords of Draenor, and while those 8 dungeons so far are of stellar quality, it's not enough. It just is not good enough. We need more to, just to be able to keep people interested in dungeons, and hopefully the reason why Blizzard aren't putting as many as they should into the, base version of the game is because they're going to be adding more with content patches. They totally need to do that, frankly. Also, dungeon content is going to be worth a lot more, because LFR players will still have a reason to do heroics, so the life of a heroic dungeon should be quite a bit longer than it was in Mists of Pandaria, where frankly they were pretty shit and you were over with them extremely quickly. Alright, so finally we're going to close off today's episode with a question from Akai777Craft, who said, do you think melee will be viable, or even top, for DPS in Warlords of Draenor? Alright, that's a good question. So, melee has kind of suffered recently. with Pandaria. And one of the reasons why melee has suffered so much is that because their main benefit of being able to do, in many cases, their full rotation on the move hasn't really been too unique, because many ranged classes have been able to do the same thing. That is no longer the case in Warlords. Ranged classes are, in general, quite a bit less mobile unless it's a hunter. Of course, the sort of main thing about hunters is that they are now the movement ranged class. So things are going to be comparatively better for melee. However, melee are still going to suffer from the problem of just being really close to the boss. They're maybe going to have to watch out more for frontal cone attacks and various things like that, which are rather common. And also just things on the floor are a little bit harder in melee because you're often in a big stack of players. Though I suppose one thing that will help out the melee players is the way that they are going to be toning down other players' spell effects. So that's going to mean that you're actually going to be able to see your own character, so it should be a little bit easier to determine if you should be moving, where you should be and what you're doing. Still though, it's still a worry that melee's not going to be that great. Like it has, well, I mean, it's still been good in MoP, it's still been viable, but it just hasn't been optimal in some cases. So hopefully Blizzard are able to just bring that back. And I guess one way they could do that is just by challenging ranged players more. As a hunter, I don't mind that, because obviously I can move as much as I bloody well want to. But on another class, I think that just aggressively trying to whack ranged players with the same bullshit that melee players get would be a totally fine thing to do. Though not to the point where it makes the lack of being able to cast while moving extremely annoying. Still, I am glad that the casting while moving thing has been toned down a little bit, because frankly, it did remove a little bit of the skill cap, it removed a lot of positional thought and gameplay, and again, it wasn't really fair on melee, because Blizzard gave melee's unique thing, i.e. DPSing on the move completely, and they just gave that to ranged, which I think was a little bit too much. Now at least it's given to hunters, and I'd imagine that in a complete standstill fight, a hunter may not do as much DPS as another ranged class. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on range versus melee balance. I still need to test things more though. Anyway, that's also it for the Q&A, so if you have any questions that you would like to ask, then be sure to leave them down in the comments for this video. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. You can like, subscribe and all that stuff, and I'll see you next time.